so that students understand what services are still being provided and what services are not, and how they can ensure that they're getting the best support that they can, and so forth. And so what this does is asks for a bunch of directors to deal with a type of what they call level 2 response, right? Which is in the wake of going online, what are we exactly doing, and how are we providing support to students that still need to access, academic, advising, counseling, these kinds of things. And so the document is broken up into 4 components. What school and division are you from? And this is obviously so that when we start to collect and combine these, we can start to see overlap and differences or variations to what schools and colleges are doing, what unit. And so in this example, it's from the Academic Success Center. What kind of services are provided from that unit, and who should be contacted. And so it goes through then and talks about how will the services above be delivered remotely. So this whole document is about how are you still providing the services of your department in a remote environment. And so then it asks the individual to talk about the service delivery and how that's going to happen and what steps will be taken. It then asks, in this section, will there be any face-to-face, which, as we all know, no. Will the service be suspended? There are some departments, in fact, that have had to do so. And how can you access the service? And then it moves into personnel and training. Are your staff members able to provide the service in a remote location? How are we going to communicate to our students and to our faculty this shift from face-to-face to online and changes in support or services? Are there any challenges that we need to consider as a community and address, and opportunities for collaboration? And so you can see this is more of a chart, right? So while it does include a fair amount of information that is similar to the online tutoring, and in fact, when I filled my continuity chart out, a lot of it was pulled from this document that I had already created. You can see that it's in a chart form in order for people like me who are working on the committee to be able to go in and start to track and start to combine schools or colleges, divisions who have similar types of remote services, similar types of personnel and training or cross-training approaches, similar types of approaches for communicating or engaging with students, challenges that they may have, and or opportunities for support for other units or departments that need that kind of support. So in this document, if I were to be analyzing it then, I would look at the fact that it is divided up into 4 components, and each one of those are required to be filled out. And then also what components are most important. So certainly service delivery is incredibly important for this document. And so as you can see, it will lay out very clearly what support is provided, how it's provided, and in what context for who, right? The other would be personnel, staffing, and training. So is there anything that these departments or units need help with? And then, of course, the challenges and opportunities are also important as well. So this is meant to be a document that starts to place information into an Excel spreadsheet, right? To start to see, all right, similar challenges, similar opportunities, similar communication plan, similar training, and so on and so forth, so that we can then start to group and start to see gaps, opportunities, and make sure that we're not repeating this type of support and announcements across campus, but we have a kind of one voice, right? But again, if I was going to do an analysis of this, I would be talking very much about the structure, right, and the layout, because it's very different from like a typical, say, like Word document. It's in a chart form, right? I would be talking about the required categories that are in this document, whereas the other document, I determined what was important and included what I thought was necessary for students to be able to utilize our online tutoring. And then also the purpose for this document, which is to see what units and/or departments are doing, what kind of support they are or are not providing, where there's gaps and where there's potential for collaboration. And so this becomes more of a data kind of document that we can kind of like begin to track and kind of analyze for similarities and for outreach, right? So it's a little bit different. I'm trying to think. I mean, even if you were to look at like a typical assignment, right? In that assignment, if you say the audience is for students and it's supposed to give guidelines and instruction for completion of the assignment and so forth, you want to talk about that each assignment has a particular title or some type of, descriptor for what that assignment is. Typically always has a point system, right? If it's a good assignment, it should tell you what is this assignment, why is this an important assignment, right? So it will kind of talk about various different ideas or steps that a student can take. It'll have a description of the requirements, 2 to 4 pages, double spaced. They should be formal in tone and structure, and then might have step-by-step kind of like do 1 through 4, right? And so you can describe that, but pull some of the stuff out from there, right? You should also reference, have a clear goal, letters should use, you may choose, feel free to, you must do this. So like these kind of phrases are kind of like directions and or instructions or non-negotiable kind of statements, right? You can't just decide to write about something different, completely different. You can't decide to not include steps, run through 5 up here, right? I mean, I guess you could, but you're not going to get the full points, right? The same with the instructions for online tutoring, right? Like a student has to go to this particular site to schedule an online appointment. The student has these particular avenues for outreach or to talk with somebody about issues they may have, right? However, these students may also need additional materials for support, so those are provided. Students have to submit their papers by a certain day for their online appointment or they won't be seen. So it's a weird combo of like, here's support, but also here's what you must do for that support, right? Whereas like an assignment is more of a, here's this assignment, here are the learning objectives and outcomes, here is what you must do, here's where you can be, have a little bit of like freedom or leeway, where it says things like feel free to, but there are usually not very many phrases like that. It's more like you must, for this, you will need to, this, things like those kind of statements. So I'd be pulling those phrases out. I would be pulling out examples of the step-by-step 1, 2, 3, things like that when I talk about the assignment and its audience and its purpose and kind of like what the belief is that the user should be doing with that and so forth. So I hope that helps a little bit. And so I want to just make sure that once again, you use the rhetorical genre analysis, which again can be found under the files for Project 2, and you use that to go through each, to kind of draft up Project 2. So you should have an introduction and then go into body paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and some of these are going to have more paragraphs just because of like what it's asking you to kind of look at. But it's not enough just to talk about this in some vague way. You need to pull out examples and clearly reference the text that you've used and found as almost evidence. That's your research. That is your in-text citation. That is your validation of the claims that you're making, if that makes sense. All right, so obviously send me any questions that you might have regarding this assignment, and we will chat some more when we have our conferences.